Well, the time is quickly coming upon us when we're going to be driving home after work in the dark and arrive to a driveway full of snow. No longer will you be left in the dark trying to clear the snow because we're going to be adding an off-road LED light bar to a snowblower, and we'll use a power tool battery that most of us already have, making this an affordable and simple upgrade to get us through the winter. Some snowblowers already have a light up here by the controls, but the problem with those lights is that the chute or the body of the snowblower itself blocks the light. As you can see, my snowblower didn't come with any lights, which poses a different problem. If your snowblower has lighting built in from the manufacturer, then you already have some kind of power source producing electricity, like a battery or a magneto generating electrical current that you can easily tap into in the circuit in order to add a brighter LED light. If your snowblower is like mine and doesn't have electrical power, we need to find a way to power these lights, and I'm going to be using an 18-volt power tool battery, and I'll walk you through how I'm going to set this up and what's needed to do this in a minute. Let's walk through what is needed to make this all work. I'm going to be adding a 7-inch light bar to the front body here, where the light will not be blocked by anything at all. The light will be powered by this 18-volt battery, which will be hooked up to this battery adapter that I bought on Amazon for just a few dollars. Amazon has these same adapters for all the different battery brands as well. Third, we'll need a switch. I'm actually going to be replacing the switch that came with this adapter with a waterproof rocker switch that lights up when the lights are on. We're also going to need an inline fuse to protect the battery and components from a surge or a short. My adapter came with the fuse, so I don't need to add one separately. We'll also need a voltmeter to monitor the battery as the battery is used to make sure we don't drain the lithium battery too far, because if you do, it won't charge up again and you're stuck with a paperweight.
No! God, please, no! No!
I'll show you exactly how to know what the max limit of your battery is. Finally, we'll need some electrical wire and accessories to wire up the system. I'm using 16 gauge south wire cord, which has 2 wires inside and can be used in wet applications. I have a variety of different connectors and heat shrinks that I'll use throughout the installation. I've linked to all items used in this build in the description of the video in case you want to pick some up for yourself. Now, one issue we might run into is the voltage of these batteries, which are usually in the 18 to 20 volt range, whereas some of the components may be meant for automobiles, which run on 12 volt systems. If any of the components you're using has a max voltage of 12 volts, you may need to pick up a voltage regulator that will step down your battery voltage to 12 volts, which can be used by the rest of your system. When I purchased all of these parts, I made sure that each would handle over 20 volts, so I'm not going to be needing a regulator. Why don't we just jump right into the build and get started? I start by marking the location of the light and use a punch to leave a small indent to keep the bit from walking on the metal. The important part of this equation is to drill on your mark. More to come here. I drill the first hole, no problem. Now here on the second hole, I had doubts I was drilling in the right spot. I even re-looked at my initial mark, and I said, heck, I'll just continue to drill here. And as you can see, I was way off and drilled on the incorrect mark. I'm using primer to put over the bare metal to help keep it from rusting, and I follow it with whatever top coat paint I had on hand, just to give it another extra coat of protection, and you'll never see the color of the paint underneath the bolts. Once it's all dry, I can fasten the light to the snowblower. Next up, I need to mark and drill the location for the voltmeter and the switch. Now, my model of snowblower has a metal area up here. Some have plastic, so I need to use a couple different bits. First, one to start the hole, and then I use a step bit that's meant for metal to drill out to make the bigger hole that will fit both of the switches. Once that's done, I need to, again, protect the bare metal with primer and paint. If you have plastic, obviously you can skip this step. To make it easier on me, I just taped around, cut out the holes, and sprayed it. Once it dried, I removed the tape, and we're ready for a test fit. I have to admit, it kind of looks like it came from the factory like this. Of course, I got to push the buttons like a little kid. All right, now we're moving on to building out the wiring harness, and I need to start by removing the pre-wired switch, which came with the adapter. I needed to unsolder the negative wire and replace it with a new negative wire, which will go directly to the voltmeter. This is actually the last thing I solder on this entire build, so if you don't have soldering equipment or have no idea how to solder, don't worry about it. Now I need to create a pigtail because this negative wire needs to carry on from the voltmeter to the switch. And I'm going to do that by splicing two wires together and then using a crimping tool and one of these connectors, which will crush the fastener around the two wires, creating a strong, tight fit. This adapter came with an inline fuse, which is the first thing in the line right after the battery. If yours doesn't, you want to start with adding a fuse. Here I'm showing you how I splay the two wires apart and then twist them together, which will again be crimped together, adding a pigtail going to the voltmeter. And I add one more female connector to the hot end, which is going to go to the switch. All right, let's take a minute and kind of review where we're at. We just updated or switched out the negative wire coming off of the adapter, and that's going into the voltage meter. We've made a pigtail coming off of the positive, also going into the meter, and these two pigtails will now go to the switch. From the switch, we'll go directly to the light. And you can see I have the fuse. So right now, if I put the battery in the adapter, this is not going to light up because the fuse is blocking the current. When I go ahead and add the fuse, we're going to get a reading on this. Actually, let me bring you closer because I want you to see the reading of a dead battery and then a fully charged battery, which is behind me. And that's why this voltmeter is so important. You have to be very careful when you plug in a battery to this adapter when the fuse is in line, because current will be coming through these pigtails at the end here. This one is covered up, the hot wire. So as long as these two don't touch or they don't touch metal together, you're going to be okay. This is a dead battery. And how I got this battery to be dead, I used this battery when I was doing all of the drilling, and then when I was done drilling, it still wasn't discharged. So I hooked up a clamp to the trigger and ran it until the battery, the tool didn't stop. These tools are set to stop when the battery gets too low, but I ran it until the battery was showing the blinking, which means your battery needs to be recharged. So I wouldn't want to take this down any further when I'm using it on the snowblower, because at this point, the tool still works. I know the battery can be recharged, so there's really no need to push it. So this battery, when I plug it in, is showing 16 volts. So I know now when I see 16.0 volts, I know I got to turn it off, put a new battery in. Now let's check out what a brand new battery reads. All right, this is the battery fresh off of the charger. And again, making sure my leads aren't touching anything. .2 volts. So that's fully charged, fresh off of the charger. I don't know why it's 20.2 volts if this is a 18 volt battery, but hey, what do I know? It is what it is. All right, the next step is we need to wire up the switch. Before we do that, I want to go back and put some heat shrink over the connections here on the wire. I should have done that before I put these connectors on, because they're kind of fat up at the top and I have to use some pretty thick heat shrink to get over it. I still think it'll shrink down, but I just want to add a little bit of protection to this connection for water, and I think it's going to be just fine. So let's do that real quick and then we'll get to the switch. This is going to go from the switch to the lights. So this stuff is really easy to work with. There's a rubberized coating around it, and to strip it off, you just kind of use a knife or your wire strippers. Just give it a little score, and then the sheathing comes right off, and you're left with the wire and some of this cardboard paper insulation that's twisted between the wires. So just take scissors, cut off the cardboard. Now, unfortunately, the wire is white and black, so that's a little confusing. So I'm going to keep black to black, and white will turn into the hot wire, which normally white is not a hot wire. But I figured black to black is consistent, and it's pretty much only me working on this, so I'll remember what to do. What I'm going to do on the bench here is pigtail the black to black, which goes to the switch. This will not need to be pigtailed because it will go onto the third, I think it's this one. This is what will send the power down to the light. Then we'll be ready to move on to the snowblower. All right, everything is done. This harness is complete. We have the adapter. These two go to the voltage meter. These three go to the switch. And here's the cord that will go down to the light. Now the fun part, let's put it all on the snowblower and we finally get to test it out. Hopefully it works, because I haven't tried it yet. What could go wrong? I lay out the cord and attach the adapter to the machine using stainless steel screws and nuts. Follow that up by attaching the voltmeter and the switch to the snowblower. And again, like a little kid, I have to push all the buttons. All right, now that we have the adapter put onto the machine, I can start hooking things up. I will add some dielectric grease to these connections. I don't have any on hand at the moment, but that'll keep the moisture from going inside the switch, and should be all set. So let's just make these connections real quick. So that's what it looks like underneath. Now I may have to put some zip ties to clean this up, but we'll deal with that in a minute. I'm routing the cord down the handlebars using zip ties to keep it out of the way and nice and tight to the bar. I have to remove this plastic cover in order to drill a small hole into it, so I have a place to attach another zip tie. All right, finally we have to connect the cable to the light. And one thing that I thought about as I was, going through this process, I think I want to be able to disconnect the light from the rest of the wiring harness in case I have to service the front of the machine, because in order to service the auger, you take this whole piece off of the front, and if it was connected to the light, I'd have to remove the light, which isn't a huge deal. But if I can figure out a way to connect it so I can plug and unplug it, but also keep it somewhat watertight, I figured that was a better idea. So I'm just going to be using some of these male and female connectors. We'll see how it goes. Now this is where you want to make sure you're measuring correctly, because if you cut this cord too short, you got to start all over, or you have to add a little bit of a bridge wire to reach the light. So take your time here. I add 2 female connectors to the new cord, and then 2 male connectors to the wires coming out of the LED light. These connectors are actually pretty cool because they'll also heat shrink down tight against the wire, preventing some water to get in through the backside. So this is where I finally ended up, but I lost the camera footage on accident. I used red heat shrink on the positive connectors and black heat shrink on the negative connectors, so I didn't have the problem of what's what, and you can see they pull apart nice and easy. I know exactly what's going to go where when I have to reconnect them. They easily slide right back together. And to finish it off, I'll use electrical tape and just give it a nice tight wrap all the way up and down the connections. Well, now we're going to see if it actually works. So we'll leave it as it is, and let's give it a test. All right, we got the fuse in. Fully charged battery pack. You're going to want to stick around because I know the question that you're asking yourself, well, how long is one of these battery packs going to last? We're going to keep these lights on and set a timer up and see how long exactly it'll last till it gets down to that 16 volts where I know it's a cutoff. So here we go. Let's see if all this works now. Oh, the voltmeter is on. And here we go. Nice. It works. Wow, that's a ton of light. And to show just how bright it is, I'm bringing you guys outside so you can see for yourself, and you can tell this is bright. I'm literally lighting up at least 35 to 40 feet in front of me. And when everything is bright white outside, this is gonna be super bright. Let's see how long this battery will last. Clip it in. 20.2 full charge. And there we go. I just let this run, not really knowing what to expect, if it was going to be 10 minutes or 30 minutes. As you can see, it just keeps on going. The volts are barely even going down. And after an hour and almost 15 minutes, I decided that was good enough for me because I'm only snow blowing for 45 minutes to an hour, and I still have 3 bars of battery left. And the voltmeter only got down to 19 volts. So this would easily last for probably 3 hours on a full charge. Well, I just want to thank you guys for watching. This was a really fun build. I know it's outside of what I normally do in my workshop, but I think it's, I know it's going to help me. Hopefully it'll help someone out there have a little bit better experience in some of these brutal winter conditions that we deal with. Everything that I used in this build video will be linked below if you want to pick some up for yourself. And the #1 way that you can support me is to subscribe to my channel and watch my videos. So if you enjoyed this, please subscribe, hit that like button, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.